Awesome session, Edward. A lot of points that I want to just dive into and talk to you about. But this toxic chemical, can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
It seemed the what I was trying to describe was some type of an energy source that was giving off that if you were too close or exposed to it, it could be you could have a negative effect to it. It could be like a poison.
Hmm.
But on the other side of that, there was these contradictory ideas about it because on one side I was attempting to describe was that if you had slow exposure to it, you might have a longevity effect on you. It might actually be beneficial for you. If you
Hmm.
had too much too fast, it could be a toxic or poisonous type of experience to a person.
Right.
So it was an interesting contradiction to as I was doing my best to try to explain. Good,
Yeah.
good. I hope.
This is yeah. No, you did a great job. You all did an excellent job on this. This was a I would say it's a difficult target to describe aspects of it. There's tangible aspects to this target, and you all had elements of that. This was a great division of effort. I think Sean will agree with me on that one. And but trying to collect the data on some of this stuff is really difficult. And you guys did some very curious things that I think was very well done. So I know everybody's dying to know what it is. Any comments before I do the reveal? I know we're kind of on the edge of our seat here. Okay, we are looking at
No
the
wonder
Oracle.
they got high and they did everything because they were high. That's exactly what I had in my session.
And we'll get into there is some evidence, not in the way you may think, in terms of another substance that may have impacted them, but there's evidence of that. But I think you all had elements of this target. Fascinating target. What's interesting is the tasking is 800 to 400 BC, so that's a wide time span. So there was other data that I think dealt with world events and things of that nature as well, which possibly, which is why we had so many different pieces of a story, I think, because as we'll get into, these oracles were used for a variety of different reasons, for a variety of different information. Just on a personal note, I think it's really cool that we got sent to look at like remote viewing from how many years ago. Not that it's the same process that all of us use, but they're trying to tap into something. And at the very end of this discussion, I am going to ask if you guys think this was something legit or is this a made up story? And you guys can compare it to what it is that all of you do. So let's get into the feedback here. All right. So looking at our sub cues here, the remote viewer is to view the Pythia as she gave advice to people when they visited her in the Temple of Apollo in Delphi, Greece, around 800 to 400 BC. The remote viewer is to describe how she was getting her profound knowledge to answer the inquiries. And I think we all had very good elements of that. The oracle was in the Temple of Apollo at Delphi in central Greece. There's just a map shot of it. There's another shot of the ruins there. I know some of you had ruins data. And a layout here, sketching it. Dick, you had all these different entrances and hierarchical entrances and things, which I think ties into that piece there. But you have all these different places here of it. There's different springs that were here, different places where different elements and things seem to have been happening. It's curious, the oracle's chamber is down below here, towards the bottom of the structure. Okay, so the Oracle of Delphi was a renowned priestess of Apollo at the ancient Greek sanctuary of Delphi, famous for delivering prophecies and guidance to individuals and city-states. The Pythia, as she was known, would enter a trance-like state and utter cryptic pronouncements that were then interpreted by priests. So it was two parts. She would do her session, and then the priest would interpret her data, basically. This oracle held immense influence throughout the ancient Greek world, shaping decisions on everything from planting crops to going to war. Typically, it was a middle aged woman chosen for her moral character and purity. So, this wasn't just one woman who was 400 years old. They chose women, who fit certain criteria to come in and to become oracles. So, it wasn't just one person throughout, it was multiple women that held this role. The Pythia, or the priestess of the Temple of Apollo at Delphi, were active for over 1,000 years, from 8th century BCE to the 4th century CE. The temple was a major religious site in ancient Greece, and Pythia's prophecies were highly sought after. At the height of influence, the Pythia's fame and influence peaked between the 8th and 4th centuries BCE, with lawmakers, colonists, and religious leaders seeking her counsel. The decline in closure came when the Pythia continued to operate into the late 4th century CE, when the Roman Emperor Theodosius closed the temple as a part of the anti-pagan policies. There were multiple Pythias during the height of the oracle's popularity. They were often multiple Pythias serving concurrently to handle the height volume of requests, according to Plutarch. Several ancient texts mention the Oracle of Delphi, a significant religious site in ancient Greece, where people sought prophecies from the god Apollo through the priestess known as the Pythia. Authors like Herodotus, Plato, and Plutarch provide accounts of the oracle and its influence, while inscriptions at the Temple of Apollo in Delphi itself also offered insights into its significance. 2,000 years from now, they may be looking at the oracles of the future forecasting group, I think. The first Pythia is said to have been the goddess Themis, who is depicted on a 5th century BC cup shown here, sitting on a tripod and holding a bowl and a sprig of laurel at Apollo's sacred tree. According to Strabo and other sources, the Pythia was inspired by mysterious vapors. Here you go, guys. These accounts have been largely ignored by modern researchers. Now, however, a team of archaeologists and geologists have proved that the Temple of Apollo sat directly above the fault lines that likely released intoxicating carbon-based ethane and methane gases into the Adyton. Was this the oracle's secret? So, based on everybody's data, it sounds like there were these gases emanating from the ground that they were inhaling that were allowing them to access this altered state of consciousness. There was something called the omphalos. It's an egg-shaped stone, the very stone described by the Greek writer Pausanias, who visited Delphi in the 2nd century, represents the Ophalos, or navel of the world. According to Greek legend, Delphi was fixed as the center of the world when Zeus released two eagles, one from the west, the other from the east, which met in the sky above Delphi. The original Omphalos stone, now lost, was probably an archaic cult object that supplicants draped with wreaths, resembling the wreaths carved in relief on this stone. There was some ambiguity and interpretation. Some prophecies, they say, were deliberately vague or paradoxical. A famous example: before invading Persia, King Croesus asked the oracle if he should go to war. The oracle replied, "If you cross the river, a great empire will fall." It did, but it was his own. This ambiguity protected the oracle's reputation, regardless of the outcome. And some famous sayings here: "Know thyself," carved in the temple at Delphi. "Nothing in excess" was a warning against hubris, and "make your own nature, not the gods your guide." So just a few things that were said by the oracle. All right. Any questions on this target before we hand it over to Sean, or any comments real quick before we hand it over to Sean for his analysis? Okay.
That was interesting. That was really interesting. Good target.
Yeah, I think it was really cool to watch remote viewers work a target of people who were doing something, some psychic work basically, and get a glimpse of what's, we don't know what the mechanism is, and maybe this gives us a snapshot as what that mechanism might be that you guys are accessing. So, Sean, I'm going to hand it over to you, sir, and let's see what your analysis brings back.
Thanks, Dennis. Yeah, it's interesting. Who watches the watchers, right? Yeah, there was a lot of corroboration data on this target, and it does seem to support the theories that that our modern day science are coming up with about how they got influenced by gases from the ground.
Yeah, thank you for compiling all that corroboration, Sean. And there's so much, and there's so much that we can dive into, which we're going to do in a moment. We're going to go to our team chat, kind of our after action review, which will be in a separate segment. But before we wrap this presentation up, I'm just going to run through each viewer and just give real quick, maybe a minute at the most, just your impression. Is this something legit? Is this a story? Is it made up? What do you think was going on here? I'm just going to go by the order you guys are now on my screen. Daz, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, seems legit. The writings are there in the past. It's been written about by famous people. Yeah, it was good to see that we picked up on these very famous psychics.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you, Daz. Bryan?
I think it's legit. There's a lot of stuff in these sessions that just corroborated and it corroborated well. Uh, So I enjoy doing it, and I enjoy seeing everybody else's session in this.
Awesome. Thank you, Bryan. Dick?
It was interesting to see the division of effort between the viewers. Like Daz
Yeah.
got the psychic person, and Bryan and I kind of got the sight. I think there
Mhm.
was something going on there. I think there was from my session an element of showmanship and maybe like
Mhm.
dress it up a little bit, but there really was something mystical happening there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which would make sense given how important they were and how many people came to them. There probably was some showmanship there.
Yeah, they got to put on a show with it, but
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
still real stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Derek?
Yeah, I mean, what resonates really a lot with me was my drawing of the person laying on the table in the little cloud bubbles of
Hmm.
their actual visions of their memories.
Yeah. Hmm.
Because I think that fits like rock solid with what this target is.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I would lean in on this being more real than ficticious.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not too long ago, 200 years ago, people thought, the city of Troy didn't exist. And then archaeology, discovery, and they've found it. So they're finding more
Yeah.
and more truth behind what has fallen into mythology and legend. And I feel like this is going to fit that bill as well.
Very cool. Agreed. Thank you, Derek. Edward?
Uh, totally legit. Totally legit. Going at least from my session, I think it's been storified, maybe
Hmm.
embellished upon over the years, which I had in the session, but the base element was there's something emanating from something. If you got too close to it, you'd go into an altered state. You'd go into a dreamlike state.
Hmm.
And that's what they did, and I don't think there's much more to it than that. They got intoxicated and went into a dreamlike state, said this and that. Maybe they were on for a couple, what history seems to show if they were on a few times over a couple of hundred years. I don't know what happened in between all those hits, but it was probably pretty fun to be the Oracle, just go and get high all the time.
Yeah. Well, and obviously they had such popularity for 1,000 years. They had to be putting out some pretty good information, or as Dick said, maybe just putting on a really good show. But it
Hey
sounds like
man,
based on your data, they were tapping into something.
they probably were.
Yeah.
Hey, they probably were.
Yeah.
But it's
Very
probably
cool.
it's part of their culture. So when it's part of
Hmm.
your culture, I mean, if the guy comes and says, what's going to happen if I go to war? Well, one side's going to lose. Oh my God.
Right.
You
Right.
can't lose on that.
Right. Right.
Man, jeez.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a pretty good prediction there, right?
Hey man, I'll make that one all day long. But very cool. Very cool target. I thought it was really cool. I'm
Yeah, I
glad
agree.
because my session I thought made absolutely no sense to me. Now it makes
Yeah.
total sense to me.
Yeah, it does. You guys all did a great job. Naeem, your final thoughts on this one?
Yeah, interesting target. I think for sure there was something going on there. How effective it was, I mean, I guess we'll never know, but definitely picked up on the land features. Like there's the location aspect, and then there's the whole, kind of spiritual or metaphysical part of it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think they were into some spiritual, whether it's negative or positive. I had the sense of like witchcraft and summoning and that kind of stuff associated with ruins. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think there was probably something there.
You were on your very first few words was wizardry. So you jumped right into this one, Naeem. So nice job on
Mhm.
that. Okay. Sean, any final thoughts here as the analyst?
Yeah, the corroborating data was very strong. I'm going to go with this was a legit place where they were doing some legit psychic work. Might have been into some other things that we're not aware of, but I think we got some teasers to that in the data. So it was really cool to see.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Great job by everybody on this one. That's going to wrap it up for this session, looking at the Oracle of Delphi. Fascinating to see the areas of overlap. We're going to get into a team chat where we can really go down some rabbit holes with that because we do have elements of etheric beings, extraterrestrials, some kind of technology. So we can really take a deep dive and look at some of that stuff in our discussions as well, which I think is fascinating. Getting a glimpse of the potentially psychic energy and the mechanisms behind it that we may be potentially using every week to bring you some of our data. So, great job by everybody on behalf of Daz, Bryan, Dick, Derek, Edward, Nyiam, Sean, and the rest of the Future Forecasting Group. I'm Dennis Nappi II. Thanks for watching.
Watch the full debrief, including every detail from the remote viewing sessions, only at futureforecastinggroup.com.